it's really important to be able to be like, even when you're a cop, to not totally identify with being a cop, because that is all beyond your control. Like, you can get hurt at any time during your career and be done. Or you can be the best murder detective in the world, and the chief can come in tomorrow and say, hey, guess what? Detectives is now rotational and your time is done. Bye. You're back on patrol. Or whatever you put your identity into, it can be taken away like that, beyond your control. So it's like, you better have some eggs in other baskets besides that identity as a cop.
This episode is brought to you by Trident Coffee, a veteran-owned brand and lifestyle. And while they're masters of cold brew, Trident's beans are roasted to create a flavor that shines whether you drink it hot or cold. There's no bitterness, there's no burnt taste, it's just good tasting coffee. Their coffees taste amazing hot, which is how I prefer it, while still designed to excel as a cold brew. But Trident Coffee is more than just great taste. Trident supports your wellness journey, featuring ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics. It's made for those who enjoy good coffee and value quality and health. So if you're looking for a coffee that meets you wherever your day takes you, hot or cold, you need to check out Trident Coffee. I know I said I prefer hot coffee, but here's a tip from me. Mix their instant cold brew with your favorite protein for a protein coffee drink that's great cold. You can thank me later. I know there's a lot of coffee options out there, but give Trident a try. I know you'll enjoy it as much as I do. Head over to tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. That's TDP15 for 15% off your order.
Hey everybody, welcome back. For those listening live this morning, Monday, when this episode comes out, yesterday was the Marine Corps birthday. So happy birthday to all the Marines out there. My guest this time is a Marine Corps veteran. He's actually the recipient of the Navy Marine Corps Medal, which we get into more during our conversation. He's a double transitioner, transitioned out of the Marine Corps, spent 29 years in law enforcement, recently retired as a sergeant. Early in his career, he went towards the SWAT tactical training aspect, which kept him in a position of training and trainer for the majority of his career. He's a lifelong practitioner of martial arts, including doing some MMA training, and today he's more focused on jiu-jitsu. He was very instrumental in bringing the wellness program to his organization. And maybe that doesn't fit the image that you're thinking of the Marine SWAT tactical guy, but it was a component that he saw that was a need in his organization, because he was seeing the officers that were surviving deadly encounters, but then the post-traumatic stress that they were dealing with. So he was he was a driving force in bringing that wellness program to his organization. Having retired a couple years ago, today he owns Spartan Tactical Solutions, where he's the owner and lead trainer there. But that's enough about me talking. Let's get into this. Here's episode 169 with Steve Odom.
How long you been doing this?
We just crossed the 3-year mark.
All right, awesome.
So,
and how long have you been retired?
December will be 1 year.
All right, cool.
You're about a year.
2 years now.
You're 2 years?
Yeah, it's gone by quick.
How you enjoying being retired?
I love it. Yeah, I think I did it right. So I'm super happy with how I did it. And hopefully I can help people with that process, because I did counseling for like 6 months prior as part of, like, I did a lot of stuff in the wellness space the last 5 years, and counseling to transition was a big help to me. And I'm hoping I can kind of convince more people to.
What pushed you that way?
Just being in that wellness space, I was working with different clinicians, and we were trying to develop different programs, and one of them was counseling for retirees. And so I was kind of talking to the doctor, like, hey, do you think, like, I'm on my way out? Do you think this is something I should be doing? I didn't want to be one of those guys that, talks the talk but doesn't walk the walk. She was like, yes, you should be doing this. So I started doing it, 6 months out, and it was huge. Really a good way to help me like kind of jettison the, the bad parts of the career and the things that frustrate you and the things maybe you're bitter about or that fucked you up, and then hold on to like the parts that were really positive. So I think that was, and plan what I want to do and what my goals are and what's important to me for the next phase. Otherwise, I kind of would have went into it a lot blinder, I think, and struggled more.
You mentioned having already had about 5 years in the wellness space leading into it, but even with that much time operating in the wellness space, was there anything that was real eye-opening to you talking to a counselor?
I don't know that it was super eye-opening to me, but she was really smart and helped me process a lot of the information. And I had done a little bit of counseling, years before, but it didn't really help me too much. I didn't really connect too much with that counselor. And then the guy ended up robbing a bank.
The counselor did?
Down in Santa Maria. And then he ended up committing suicide, driving his RV off of a cliff up in Big Sur. So it's really like, if you have trust issues and you don't want to talk to someone, and then you finally commit to that, and then it turns out like they're a complete maniac and criminal, like it really turned me off to the clinician space, I think, a lot.
This is a real naive way to look at it. And I know that by saying this, I'm probably to a degree off base, but I couldn't imagine connecting with a counselor and feeling like they get me, and then they go and drive a motorhome off a cliff. It would almost kind of be like, well, Jesus, am I as crazy as they were?
I thought maybe it was kind of a technique they used to make you feel more normal. I'm like, he's really invested.
I can relate.
So it was very, that was a terrible experience. And it really motivated me toward getting more culturally competent clinicians for our people. So if they do decide they need help, we need to have stuff that's confidential, that's not going to involve them in the department, but then also people that are vetted and capable of talking to first responders in that community and can relate to them and help them. So I was lucky to have that for sure.
The organization you were with was which?
Sheriff's Department. Yeah, I was with San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Department.
And when they implemented that wellness program, were you one of the driving forces in putting it in place, or did you just kind of jump on when they first implemented it?
I was a driving force in putting that in place. And of course I had other people helping me in command support and all that stuff. But yeah, my first probably 25 years, I didn't give a shit about any of that wellness stuff. I was a SWAT guy, range master and patrol. And I kind of felt like you could either do the job or you couldn't. And that type of mentality from the military. But then I lost friends to suicide. I had officers that were prevailing in deadly force encounters, but then they were going out on PTSD. So we had this kind of one-shot cops thing going on. And I realized that was really a problem if you have officers that are winning fights and winning gunfights, but then they're no longer viable because of their mental condition. There needs to be stuff in place for that. There's more to the job than just winning gunfights. Yeah, if that's what it's called for. We want them to win that, but then also prevail with the rest of their life and be viable human beings and continue to function. Because once you have that experience too, I think it make you a better officer and have more input and better officer safety, and that's a super valuable information that can be passed on. So that kind of stuff was happening. And I ended up having a deputy work for me, this guy, Toby Depew, and he was a former pastor, and he had a big congregation, very successful. He ended up having some issues in his life with his daughter's health and stuff, and ended up getting out of that job and going into law enforcement. And he worked for me, and he was interested in doing like the chaplaincy program, which we didn't have chaplaincy. We didn't have peer-to-peer. We didn't have critical incident debriefing, and kind of none of that stuff in place. So he was interested in developing that. He had the skill sets. I was very used to program building. I did a lot of program building at the sheriff's office and looked at things that we had a need to implement, and was used to changing policy, building programs, training people up, getting that going. That was fun for me. I enjoy that process. And I was like, I don't know anything about this space, but we could do it together if you were if you can get the chaplains that would be good for the program, the right kind of people in. We started doing that and implemented a chaplaincy program. And then I kind of realized there's a multi-pronged approach to that wellness stuff. It's more than chaplaincy. You also have to have peer support, and then you have to have the clinicians that are culturally competent. And then there's critical incident debriefings. So the more I got into it, the more I realized I didn't know what I didn't know. And I also saw how lacking we were in like many different aspects of wellness. So for me, it was a journey of learning about wellness in that space, and then trying to implement all those programs. And luckily, the timing was pretty good to have that happen. I had good support for it. And then COVID hit after that, and there was a big need for it. We had a lot of officer-involved shootings, people getting seriously injured, people dying, all kinds of stuff happened during that time. It was very riots and a lot of moral injury to the cops. So that was really good timing, and that we had that all in place. And I felt good about that kind of program building.
The starting of that program and you being heavily involved in it, did you find that at that point in time in your career, you were starting to see, in a weird way, maybe you needed some help, and still kind of being that old school mentality of we're not encouraged to ask for help. So by going deep into that path of helping put it in place for the department, it was actually something that you were looking for yourself? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I'm not sure that was totally the case. I think I ended up falling into it like my last 6 months, but I felt pretty adjusted and happy with my career and what was going on. But I definitely had things in my life that had happened to me that, affected me. You don't do 29 years in a career and be totally fine. But I felt pretty well.
That should actually be a bigger red flag if you do 30 years. You're like, I'm perfectly good.
Yeah.
Let's take you back then. So where's hometown? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Denton, Texas. Didn't live there very long. And then I moved around pretty much my whole life until I joined the sheriff's office. So,
what caused you to move so much?
My family moved around a lot, and then my stepdad was in the import-export business. So we moved around a lot just as a family. So I lived born in Texas. I lived in Michigan. I lived in Southern California. I lived in Hawaii. I lived in Florida. Spent a lot of time overseas in Asia and Taiwan, Japan, and Korea. It's kind of where I grew up and went to high school.
You guys went to Asia because of your stepdad's business?
Correct. Yeah. He did a primarily shoe business, import and export. Most of the shoes are made in Asia and then imported over here. So he did sort of quality control and factories and things like that. And it was good experience. I liked it. I like traveling a lot still and seeing the world.
How old were you when you got there? And what part of Asia did you primarily settle in?
We ended up, I was in 7th grade, moved to Taiwan, and we were there for about 3 years. Then I moved to Japan for about half a year. I went to a boarding school in Kobe, Japan. And then I went to Korea for about 6 months in Busan, Korea. and went to a Department of Defense school there run by the Army. And then I moved back to California for my senior year and spent about a year up in Cambria.
How did you adapt? Because you said 7th grade, so 13 years old. You're just basically kind of starting to be a young man, a young teenager. That had to be a huge culture shock and shift for you.
It was, but it wasn't bad. We went to an international school, or American school that was international. So there's a lot of people from all over the world, and it was super interesting to me to meet different people from different cultures. And then financially, we kind of stepped up from just being sort of lower middle class and going into that position. We had, a nice house. We had a maid. We had a driver. It was a whole different scenario, and they paid for us to go back to the States on vacation. We flew first class over there. It was a very different experience financially than what we were used to. So that was really nice.
How did you feel like you fit in general? Was it a pretty easy transition for you, or did you find that there were struggles with the kids your age accepting you there?
That was easy because I had moved around my whole life, so it was pretty easy for me as far as going to new places and making friends. I never really struggled with that. It was a pretty easy transition.
You have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have one brother who's about 3 years older than me, and then I've got 3 sisters, so 2 stepsisters and 1 adopted sister.
Were you all there? What I'm getting at is, were you able to kind of rely on each other in that? Because I don't think a lot of people really realize what it would be like to move from the United States to another country and have to kind of assimilate. Now, you were already at an advantage because you had moved around a lot and you'd kind of probably already built those skills of getting along with people, but still it had to be completely, no pun intended, completely foreign to you.
It was. I had some struggles, but I had my brother with me, and we were pretty close, and that was helpful. And my family was a good support system, and we were all kind of in it together.
Were you already doing martial arts at that time?
I was doing some, yeah. I was doing traditional martial arts. I kind of wanted to do more boxing and wrestling, but they didn't have that stuff over in Asia. But I did get involved in traditional martial arts, kind of from the source. So that was awesome for me. I liked it.
What pushed you into that? What was the first inclination of hey, that's what I want to try?
I think a lot of the movies and stuff at that time during the 80s and the action hero stuff. I was, loved Rocky, Rambo, Commando, all those type of movies. And I really liked working out, lifting weights, and doing martial arts. That was and I did organized sports as well, but mainly that was what I really enjoyed, was doing martial arts.
Which martial arts did you start with?
I did basically kind of old school karate, like hard karate styles. And then I got into Chinese Kung Fu when I was living in Korea. And I did a little bit of Taekwondo and Kuk So Wan, kind of jumped around from different traditional martial arts. But mainly the Chinese Kung Fu, I did a lot of the weapons-based stuff. So that was cool. I did a lot of nunchucks and those type of forms with weapons-based things. And I started getting a real liking for tools at that time.
Was the jump from one style to another more because of what was available to you as you moved?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
And you came back to the States to finish up your senior year of high school?
Correct.
And basically Central California?
Yeah, I was San Luis Obispo, Cambria. It's kind of northern part. So I went to school there for about a year, and it was real small school. But I had been to smaller schools. In Korea, there was 11 people in my class. So it seemed bigger than that, but it's still very, very small. And I was kind of struggled in school. I wasn't a great student. I was very good at certain things that I liked or enjoyed. No problem with like history, government, all that type of stuff. But then like math and sciences, I kind of struggled at. So I really wasn't like looking to go to college at that point. And I thought the military would be a good fit for me. And my dad and my brother my dad was a cop. My brother was in the military at that time. And my dad told me, like, if you want to go into law enforcement, like go in the Marine Corps, those guys tend to make the best officers. So that'd be a good route for you if you don't want to go to college.
So is that your biological dad?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
did you not come then back to California with your stepfather and mom, or did you come back on your own?
Came back on my own and lived with my dad.
What caused that move?
I wanted to live in the States for a little bit and experience like America as a teenager a little bit. So that it seemed like it'd be a good time to do that.
Your dad was the one that suggested the Marine Corps. Was there anybody else in your family who had served?
All my grandparents were World War II, folks. And my dad's dad, he was killed in World War II. So I never knew him, and my dad didn't really know him. And then my mom's dad was World War II. He was a company commander of a parachute unit in World War II. And then my step-grandfathers were all served. So everybody was basically in the Air Force or Army.
Now, was your biological dad law enforcement your whole time growing up?
Yes.
And what was your relationship like with him? Did you get to see him much especially while you're living in Asia?
Not that much. Kind of like maybe a month during the summers was kind of the deal. And he lived in Michigan. So he worked for a sheriff's department at that time. He started off being a PD cop in Denton. Then he moved to Michigan and was he worked his way up to the undersheriff of Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department. And I would see him like during the summers. We'd stay on my grandpa's farm and ride motorcycles, shoot guns, that type of thing. So I was super close to him. I idolized him, but as far as spending like the majority of time, we didn't get to do that.
Got it.
But we made that up kind of later. Once I got into law enforcement, our relationship, and I lived in California with him, then we were able to spend a lot more time together now. So it's cool.
So in your senior year, were you already dialed into the Marine Corps?
I joined halfway through on the
Delayed entry.
enlistment. Yeah. So I did that and was just kind of waiting. And as soon as I graduated at 17 and went right to boot camp.
What year was that?
85.
For you, did you look into any of the other branches, or was it just because your dad had suggested the Marine Corps and that's where you were going?
I looked around. My grandpa, suggested an Army paratroopers, and I was kind of like, I didn't know about that. And then I looked in the Navy and thought about trying to go like the Navy Special Warfare route. I was like, if I don't make it, I don't want to wear those dungarees and that weird hat. So I was like, I either have to be a SEAL or I'm getting out. So I go, in the Marine Corps, everything seems like it'd be pretty cool. So I did that and went the infantry route. And
was infantry what you wanted going in?
yeah, I didn't know much about it though, but I thought infantry would be good. I wanted to become an MP, but I was 17. You couldn't be an MP till you were 19.
Oh.
And they said, well, just go in infantry, and then as soon as you're 19, you can just request to transfer over to the MPs.
Sure. Famous last words of a recruiter.
I realized very shortly, like, I don't think I'm going to the MPs, but I like the infantry. It was a good fit for me.
MCRD?
Uh-huh.
And for you, were you already kind of a squared away kid going in, or did they kind of have to dial you in?
I wasn't super squared away. It was a good fit for me at that time. But yeah, I kind of grew up overseas and didn't have like a real drinking age or anything like that. So I started going to bars and partying when I was about 13 years old in 7th grade. And not like I wasn't terrible. I didn't do like criminal things, but I was drinking and
were you just kind of pushing back against authority a little bit?
I think so. Yeah.
How was that though? First day standing on the yellow footprints. I mean, I like to kind of get into the mindset of, oh shit, this just got real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how was that for you? I mean,
it was definitely, I was like, I didn't know much about the military at all, much less the Marine Corps. So it was a shocker to me. And, but I was physically fit. I've been doing some martial arts. I had discipline. I wasn't the most disciplined in my daily life, but I liked hard physical activity, and that stuff was fun. I'm like, oh, I'm getting paid to work out, basically, run, lift weights, and do all that stuff. And I really liked weapons and training, martial training of any sort. And I loved the history of the Marine Corps. I was big into military history. And as soon as they started like learning the history of the Marine Corps,
they don't stress that at all.
No. I started, I was definitely drank the Kool-Aid. And when you're 17, you're pretty impressionable, but I was in a good way, I think, as far as being a disciplined person and self-sacrifice and the good of the unit and the Corps, all that type of stuff. I really bought into that. And I knew whatever I did, I wanted to be the best at. So I just buckled down and was like, whatever it is, I'm gonna get through this, and I'm gonna do the best possible job I can do.
Was it always positive in your mind in the sense of, did you ever have a point where you're like, ooh, maybe I made the wrong choice, not really digging this, or was it always good for you?
I wouldn't say it was good. I enjoyed it when I was on Libo and Leave and stuff like that. And I enjoyed a lot of the process of it, but it was definitely challenging. It was hard. And I probably weighed 135 pounds at that time. So like size and weight was an issue for me being an infantry guy. So I had to basically like get in the gym, put on weight, build my body up and get used to that. And I did, and I was successful at my job, and I liked it a lot, but I knew I probably didn't want to make a career out of it.
Did you know you didn't want to make a career going in, or did that kind of get solidified for you once you were in?
No, for me, it was a jumping off point to be a cop. I thought this will train me to wear a uniform, carry a gun, learn to be disciplined, learn, how to overcome fear and anxiety and stressful situations. I was looking for all that type of thing.
Went in 85, you said?
85 to 89.
89. Coming out, did you have, you already mentioned law enforcement, so were you already starting to look at law enforcement agencies when you came out?
I was. I tested with LAPD at that time, right before I got out.
Where were you stationed at?
Camp Pendleton.
So you did your whole time at Pendleton?
I did a couple of pumps overseas and went to Okinawa, and then we did like the Philippines and Korea and stuff like that.
You're like, hey, I've been here before.
Yeah, I knew what to order on the menu and all that stuff. But yeah, I did some time overseas and just, not combat deployments or anything like that. Just
the flip side of that, while you were in or coming close to getting out, never anything that would have enticed you to stay in?
I thought about it, and I meritoriously promoted several times, and I got the Navy and Marine Corps Medal for heroism. Like, I had a good career, and I was sitting number 1 on the meritorious sergeant's list. So I was thinking about it, and I wanted to go to the drill field, but you had to be a sergeant for that position. So I was like, hey, if you guys promote me, I will go to the drill field and re-enlist. They were like, no, you have to put in a re-enlistment package first, and then we will send you to the drill field. So
yeah, we're gonna get ours before you get yours.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, I don't know if I completely trust that. So we went back and forth for a couple months, and they wouldn't promote me, and I didn't want to stay in if I didn't get to the drill field, kind of guaranteed, and get that promotion. So we ended up parting ways.
The Navy Marine Corps Medal is a pretty prestigious award to get. How did you get that? What happened?
We were in the Philippines, probably 87, something like that. And we were doing patrolling, just jungle patrol type of stuff. And I had a new guy with me who was like kind of brand new to the unit. So I was having him walk point, and we were trying to find a point to cross a river. And it was night, and it was raining, like torrential rain. I don't know if you've ever seen rain in the jungle of the Philippines, but
I've seen it. You talked about movies of the 80s. I mean, I've seen it depicted in the movies, but I've never experienced it firsthand.
Yeah, it's like a monsoon, basically. So we were looking for a spot to cross the river, and basically we got caught in a flash flood. So myself and this guy, Clark, got swept down. And I was able to get out and take my gear off. I was a pretty good swimmer. I did like swim team and all that stuff and surfed, and I was very comfortable in the water. So I got out, took my gear off. I called out to Clark, no answer. So I was like, shit. And I don't know, the Marine Corps is not too fond on you losing personnel or weapons. I was like, this could be really bad if I lost my point man. So I ended up jumping back in against all common sense at night in this torrent, basically, rapids, and ended up finding him. He was floating face down. So I was able to like flip him up and ride him and then swim to the shore and try to grab onto something. Eventually, I got some like bamboo poles on the side of the river. So I was able to pull him up over my shoulder. And at that time, he sort of came to and started throwing up all over me and stuff. I was like, I think he's going to be okay. Then eventually some guys came down and were able to pull us all out. And he lost his rifle during that thing, and it caught around his neck on some strainers or something. Eventually it popped loose, but the rifle was gone. So we stayed there for a couple days, waiting for the water to go down and swimming for rifles. And we eventually recovered it. And that was...
Was he the only one that went in that significantly?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even if you're a good swimmer with all that gear on, you're not swimming well.
No. Full deuce gear and all that stuff. It's a challenge, it wasn't good. So he got pretty lucky. But he definitely lost consciousness and had some issues later on in his life, I think, about that. I don't know if they were totally related, but according to him.
Can't blame him.
Yeah.
So he came out in 89. What'd you do right after you got out?
Right after I got out, I told you I tested with LAPD, but at that time they weren't hiring a lot of, it was more geared toward diversity, I think. So I did pretty decent in the testing, but they were like,
unless you tested the absolute highest.
Yeah. They were like, hey, maybe in 6 or 8 months, we'll talk to you. And that's really where I wanted to go.
Even with your military time, that wasn't still enough of that little bump?
Wasn't enough. Yeah. But I tested with another guy who did good. And it was interesting. I was like, but yeah, so I was like, I think I'll go to Hawaii because my folks lived in Hawaii at that time. And I said, maybe I'll go.
Now, jumping backwards, when you say your folks, is this now your mom and stepdad? Or?
Correct.
So they've left Asia and now they're in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they left Asia. They brought a frame shop in Lahaina, and we're doing like picture framing.
Your stepdad was quite the, let's try this.
Yeah. He did a bunch of different stuff. He's a cool dude. And so I moved there. I had a one-way ticket when I got out of the Marine Corps, and I said, well, I'll kind of wait and see if maybe the LAPD thing works out. And I had looked at a bunch of different agencies in California, and no one was hiring.
Your goal, though, was law enforcement in California was your only thought?
Well, I also thought about going to 4th Force Recon and going back in the Marine Corps in the reserve capacity in a Force Recon unit. And then I could go back into active if the law. So I was kind of like, I'll move to Hawaii, check out 4th Force Recon, and see what happens with the law enforcement, and see if maybe they start hiring.
Is that where that reserve unit was based? Was in Hawaii?
Yeah, it was on Oahu. So I went over to Hawaii, was looking into 4th Force Recon, but when they did my audiogram, when I got out, I lost like 40% of hearing. So then when I tested with those guys, they were like, you can't go to dive school or any of that, the naval stuff with 40% hearing loss. Like you could do admin or motor T or something. no thanks.
Had you not gotten out, would you have still been limited because of that hearing loss?
I don't think for the infantry I would have been fine.
No, if you would have stayed in and wanted to go recon, would your hearing loss still have prevented you?
It would have.
Okay.
Yeah. For the Navy stuff, I guess, for dive school and all that, they have certain hearing requirements. So, yeah, and I was shocked when I got out. I had to stay like another 2 days and get additional audiograms. And I was like, what is going on? They're like, you cannot hear. And I was like,
you're like, what'd you say?
Yeah. Like, what? How did that happen? I wonder. Because I was like a saw gunner and stuff and, you know, shooting a lot. We didn't wear really hearing.
5'7", 130, and you were a saw gunner? Is that thing as big as you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was. So I got a lot of hearing.
You didn't need to go to the gym. You just need to carry that damn thing around all day.
Yep.
That gets you farm strong.
Yeah.
So what was your time like in Hawaii? What'd you end up doing?
I was really fortunate. I met a dude who was a former Force Recon Marine and a LA County Sheriff's. And he had done maybe, 4 years LA County Sheriff. And he was a dive instructor. And I kind of met him through the frame shop. He was having some like Force Recon stuff framed. And I was like, hey, this looks like my people right here. And we started bullshitting. And he was like, hey, why don't you come work for me? Be a dive instructor. I've tried that cop stuff. I did not like it, but if you decide you like it later on, go do that. But in the interim, come work for me. So I started working for him, became a dive instructor, and he kind of mentored me, and he was a really good positive influence for me getting out of the military, because I wasn't sure quite how civilian world was going to be for me.
How did you like being out and being a civilian?
I enjoyed it. Yeah, living in Hawaii, being a dive instructor. Like
any part of being in the Marine Corps and that structure that you missed?
Well, I still had it working for this guy. In a way, it was very Marine Corps run, and he was very much like that. So I still felt like I had structure, and I liked that aspect of it. But it was also pretty laid back, and being on the beach and taking people diving. It was really fun. I fell in love with teaching at that time too.
Seems kind of weird though that you ended up being a dive instructor when Recon said because of your hearing loss you can't do the diving.
I know. Yeah, that is strange.
Did it ever give you any problems?
As a cop, it definitely did. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about like actual diving. Did you end up having any ear issues?
I did the dive team. I was a public safety diver for like 10 years at the sheriff's office, and I got some barotrauma to my ears, and I think it messed my hearing up worse. So I ended up kind of putting the kibosh on. But yeah, it did cause me some issues.
And not that he was talking negative per se about law enforcement. He had said, though, that, hey, I gave it a try. It didn't work for me. Was he ever to the point talking negatively about it to where it made you kind of go, maybe I won't even consider it? Or did you stay on that path?
I kind of stayed on that path. And his experience was with LA County Sheriff's probably like in the early 80s and like Firestone Station and stuff. And like, I think he experienced a lot of like hazing and racism and things that he didn't enjoy, and he felt like he was put at risk. And I was like, well, I'm going to San Luis Obispo, not Firestone. So I kind of felt like it would be a different kettle of fish for me personally, because at that time I kind of gave up the LAPD thing. I was like, if I do go back into law enforcement or go into law enforcement, I want to do it in that area of San Luis Obispo.
And that would have been more home for you, correct?
Yes.
What year did you come on with San Luis?
I came on in 93.
And straight into the jail even then?
Yeah, I was living in Hawaii, and my wife and I started getting kind of serious. I moved to Florida with her for a while so she could finish up school. She went to University of Florida, and I did a bunch of cave diving there. We came back to Hawaii. And at that time, we were like, well, we want to get married.
Is your wife from Hawaii?
No.
Oh.
No. She's from Florida. So, but she was living in Hawaii when I met her. And she used to work on the boats doing like videography and stuff like that, and snorkel boats and all that. And she's a windsurfer and big water sports person. So we were like, basically this career, being a dive instructor and living in Hawaii, isn't going to facilitate raising a family very well. So I said, I have a career in mind and a great place to live, but I don't know if you're going to love the career. So I ended up flying back and forth while I was testing for like 6 months. And then I was sitting number 1 on the list for the sheriff's office for corrections. So we ended up just moving from Hawaii and packed our stuff and moved to St. Louis. And I'm like, I know they're going to hire me if I'm number 1 on the list. So it took a month or so, but.
Were you originally hired as a correctional officer and then transferred over to be a deputy sheriff?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah. So they have different career series there. So I did about a year in the jail, and then my brother and I both tested, and we went to the academy together. So
for SLO, is the normal progression though for a deputy to be first assigned to the jail?
They don't have to be.
Okay.
They could get hired straight from the street, or now it's a lot more laterals and things like that. It's pretty rare to get hired right off the street as an unknown commodity, but it might be like 5 or 10% of guys are hired like that. The rest of them come from the jail or they come from other agencies.
So when you transitioned from being a correctional officer, or did they call you a correctional deputy or?
Correctional officer at that
to
time.
An actual deputy, did it make you have to go back to the jail or did you immediately hit the road?
I never had to go back to the jail again. So yeah, once you do that, you're done with that career series. It's like a promotion and you're done with the jail.
Now, you eventually promoted to sergeant, correct?
I did.
With SLO, did they require you to go back to the jail as a new boot sergeant?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Completely. So they're not like a lot of the traditional California sheriff's departments.
Yeah, it's a completely different career series. So you can be a CO, well, now they're called correctional deputies, and go up to the rank of captain in that career series. And then you can go to deputy sheriff or just start as a deputy sheriff, and you never go back to you never have to work in the jail at all. So it's completely separate.
And you came on what year as a deputy?
As a deputy in 94.
94.
So I went to Ventura SO's Academy, and good academy.
Oh, SLO doesn't have its own academy?
No, we don't.
How big is the sheriff's department? At least, I mean, not now, but back then, how big was it?
It's probably like 150 sworn and then 150 custody side. So maybe like 300.
Got it. How soon did you know, or was SWAT a priority for you?
That was early on. Yeah, as soon as I kind of started and went to FTO, I kind of went to South Station, which was like the busy station. And the sergeant there was the SWAT sergeant. And I was like, I want to be that guy eventually. I want to work South Station. I want to be SWAT. And then I want to get to the supervisory level of those particular places. That was kind of my goal.
Was SWAT a collateral assignment or a full-time?
Collateral. Yeah, it's not busy enough to justify a full-time team.
But are you, God, if I get that out, are you your own team or is it a multi-agency team?
We have one other small PD, a Tascadero PD, has members also. So it's primarily an SO, and then we have about 5 guys from a Tascadero Police Department on there as well.
And who runs the SWAT school up there?
Well, we use generally SEB, but now they're starting to, some of the guys from SEB have their own training company, and they're starting to run SWAT schools up there through their own private training company.
SEB San Bernardinos?
LA.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's where you went to SWAT school?
Yeah, I went down to LA, Sheriff's, SEB.
What year did you come on SWAT?
I came on there in about 96. So I was on 2 years, and then we do a rotation in the bailiff system, go to court. So while I was...
so that is a mandatory rotation.
Mm-hmm.
So your county doesn't necessarily have a mandatory rotation into the jail, but you have a mandatory rotation into the court.
We have court and we have the airport.
Oh, okay.
So those are kind of your Some people go there to retire on duty.
No.
And then other people are sent there like when they're brand new.
Looking at the door is like, how quickly can I get out of here?
And then you can be required to go back also. Like if you don't promote up the chain, if you never go a sergeant or a senior deputy, eventually you'll rotate back there, keep rotating back there. And you may rotate back there as a sergeant as well. So they do have those type of positions.
Ever any time as a detective?
No, I always worked patrol. And because I was a training guy and I was very invested in the range program, like once you go to a specialty unit, then your training time is pretty much over with. Because if there's a murder or something, they're like, oh, you're not teaching patrol rifle today. There's a murder. Get over there.
You ever feel like your body just isn't keeping up the way it used to? We all know that life doesn't slow down, and sometimes the grind shows up in ways that we might not expect. Lower energy, focus that's a little off, maybe even motivation that isn't quite there. Human Performance TRT knows what it's like to want to get that edge back, and they're here to help you do it without the runaround. A veteran and first responder-owned company, they're not just your typical telehealth service that just hands out prescriptions. Human Performance takes a full view of your health. First, you hop on a video call with one of their expert providers who goes through your goals, your blood work, and any specific needs you've got. From there, they create a personalized plan that goes beyond just hormones. If you need support with mental health, they've got it. If you're looking to get serious about weight management, they can coach you through it. The best part, they keep it flexible. No locked-in subscriptions. As you progress, they're checking in, making adjustments, and keeping your health plan up to date. Because what works today might look different down the line. Everything they do is sent right to your door, hassle-free, so you can stay focused on the things that matter. And here's another benefit. If you're already on a hormone replacement program or have recent blood work, Human Performance makes it easy to transition. If your lab results are less than 6 months old, you could submit those directly. No need for new blood work. They'll review your current levels and build a customized plan based on where you're at now, so you don't have to start from scratch. It's just another way that Human Performance puts you first, meeting you where you're at on your health journey. Human Performance TRT is built around your success. This isn't a one-and-done approach. It's ongoing with real guidance because your health deserves more than just a quick fix. If you're ready to take the next step towards optimized health, check out Human Performance and see what a real personalized approach looks like. And for listeners of the Transition Drill podcast, use the promo code TDP for 10% off throughout the entire time you work with Human Performance. So head over to hptrt.com and remember to use the promo code TDP, that's Tom David Paul, for 10% off your program.
So I honestly liked working patrol. That was my skill set. Anytime I was behind a computer or doing this stuff, I felt like I wasn't doing what I was called to do. It was frustrating for me. I did not enjoy that stuff. Yeah, that's exactly. Very percussive, angry type.
When does jiu-jitsu come into your life?
I started jiu-jitsu at 50. So you're a jiu-jitsu guy too, huh?
I started at 51.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I was.
So it wasn't something, even with all of your martial arts background, that you kind of brought into, at least, not necessarily, because we both kind of came up in the same time in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Jiu-jitsu in the late 90s, even into the 2000s, it was still very much, if you were going to do it, you were going to go do it on your own. Your agency wasn't really adopting it.
Well, I did a lot of MMA. So I trained at this pit, slow kickboxing and all that during Chuck Liddell's heyday and stuff. It was a big mecca for martial arts, the Central Coast. So I trained like MMA and mainly stand up. I like boxing and Muay Thai much more than grappling. But I did a little bit of submission grappling. I was fairly comfortable on the ground.
But it was, again, all driven by you, not by your organization.
Oh, correct. In fact, they would actually talk to you about not doing that type of stuff. I was looked down upon.
Really?
Yeah. They would actually give me shit. Be like, oh, you're more likely to use force or use excessive force if you're one of these MMA guys or, cage fighter or whatever kind of mentality they had. And I was like, that is a very flawed mentality that you have there.
But when you say that, now that I think back to when I was in law enforcement and coming up through it, there was that mentality that if you knew how to fight too well, you'd almost be more willing to get into fights, where it's the complete opposite.
Right. You're like, no, I could actually use force effectively. And if you have a good skill set and you know you can handle stuff, to me, that's community-oriented policing. The best cops I know are basically the most skilled operators that bring something to the table in a fight or with their weapons or tools, so they can be cool and relaxed and treat people with respect. And if things go bad, then they'll deal with that situation. But I find the more skilled officers are not the ones like puffing their chest up and being badge heavy and creating problems that are unnecessary.
Well, I think the thing that what we learn is, and I've said this to people before, I'm very fortunate that in my career, I really never ever came up against somebody who truly knew how to fight, or I didn't push them enough to where they really wanted to show how well they could fight against me. I consider myself very lucky, because I think one of the things you learn when you put yourself in a situation of any type of combatives, whether it be boxing, whether it be Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, is you realize you're making a huge mistake if you're going to try to judge a book by its cover. You think, oh, that person, and that's the person that's going to tie you up, put you in a trunk, and walk away. And so I'm very fortunate that I was able to make it through my career without ever encountering somebody who really knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
With jiu-jitsu, well, let's take it a step back. Doing the MMA, the grappling, any significant injuries you ever had to deal with?
I blew my knee out in amateur boxing. So I was probably 8 months at that point for surgery and recovery and all that stuff. So yeah, I've had a couple of knee surgeries, some from on-duty stuff, and then one from doing a fight, amateur fighting.
Did you ever do any of the police games related to it?
I did the shooting sports.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did action pistol, medaled in that one time. So that was fun. But I wanted to do boxing on my 40th birthday, but they had an age cutoff. I was too old.
Oh.
I registered, and then they were like, oh, you're 40, you can't box. And I was like, really? It's kind of ageist, but whatever. Yeah, so couldn't box in the police Olympics, but I did a lot of Battle of the Badges and stuff like that. Not at the police Olympic level. But yeah, I like doing amateur fighting, but after I blew my knee out, I was kind of like, I'm
not getting paid for this.
Yeah. It's something that can endanger your career and livelihood, and I was just doing it for fun. So, and then brain health wise, like jiu-jitsu was a good fit for me too, because I got a lot of like TBI type of stuff probably from getting hit in the head a lot. And I used to train with like the fight team guys and very high level at that time, UFC pros. and I wasn't fighting with them because I was good, because I was a cop. They let me train with the fight team guys, and they were all very cool, but it took some punishment. But it was like Tim Kennedy was around during that time. There were a lot of really, really good high-level guys that I got to train with. So that was cool. But jiu-jitsu seemed like a better fit for my brain health as I got older.
As member of the SWAT team, what was the primary hand-to-hand training that you guys were doing?
We kind of used the LAPD methodology. So I'm an LAPD's arrest and control instructor through there. So that was kind of a three-pronged thing. It was kind of like a control holds and wrist locks, pugilistics, and then grappling was the third element of it. So we were doing some of the grappling and jiu-jitsu based stuff early on.
But I'm assuming probably the mentality was avoid getting on the ground.
Correct. I was like, it's going to end up on the ground for cuffing and stuff. But that we probably had maybe 10 techniques or something that you would learn in that system. So it's very kind of limited. So you'd learn like the hierarchy of positions. You would learn how to do reversals and sweeps. Maybe like the gift wrap and lateral head displacement, a couple of key things, but essentially it was like how to get people's hands behind their back without using pugilistics at that point. So, which is pretty useful skill for most cops, I think.
As you were coming to the end of your career, did your agency start adopting more of the jiu-jitsu principles, or just more people start doing it?
More people started doing it, but we're still kind of in that system. And sometimes the training would be very focused on the jiu-jitsu tier of that, and sometimes it'd be more focused on the pugilistics, and then often it was more focused on the keto style stuff, which wasn't really my...
Because did I hear that, I believe it's Paso PD for a while now has been full-on jiu-jitsu training for their officers?
Correct. Yeah, they pay for their membership in an academy, Paragon, which is where I train. So if you're a member of that police department, they pay for you to go to the academy anytime you want. And then they go 1 hour, I believe 1 or 2 hours a week is mandated. And they get paid overtime to do that.
Their former chief was a black belt, I believe, right?
Correct. Yeah, Ty was a former black belt. So it's leadership driven. If the leadership wants well-trained personnel, they can do it.
Because if the chief is a 3-gun shooter, everybody's going to be into shooting.
Yeah. Or if he's a black belt, if they care about training and proficiency, then they can make it happen. I don't understand these places where it's like it's a budget thing or personnel thing. It's like, how much does it cost to dry practice or roll around on a mat? That is not a very expensive endeavor.
Well, and if you can change the culture to where you can you're going to have the old guys that are probably going to avoid it. They're going to resist it, but you start making all the new guys start doing it. And pretty soon it just becomes, this is the norm of our organization. Mm-hmm. It may not happen overnight, but 5 or 10 years down the road, everybody's going to be doing it.
Yeah. And he kind of built a little jiu-jitsu empire too. So he would select, candidates. I'd see guys going through the academy and they're blue belts. Like, oh, that's interesting. So he had some black belts on the department. He was a black belt. And then they seem to be hiring like blue belts and stuff like that. And they have a really good training program.
When did you know that you were coming to the end of your career?
I always thought I would kind of be at the end at 55, and we have drop. So my plan was always to hit 50, drop, do 5 years of that, and then move on to the next thing.
When did you have your own tactical company? So what I'm getting at is, when did you start planning for that, and were you able to put it into place before you actually retired?
I did. I had a company from 2011 to 2016 doing the same thing. I worked with another gentleman, John Mars, who was a sergeant with the sheriff's office, and we had a training company. So I was able to kind of implement it at that time and see what it was all about, a private company. And at that time, sergeants were kind of prohibited from training. It was a weird thing, running training.
Oh, okay.
So
within your organization?
Within our organization, there was a lot of weird stuff going on. And
did they want the training to be by lower ranks or higher ranks?
Correct. They wanted the sergeants to be out on patrol, supervising patrol personnel. So it had to be lower ranks. We were kind of blocked, and we really enjoyed training. So I worked at the academy for 10 years. I worked at CSTI. I always had side jobs teaching firearms because I loved it. And you can't really get enough mileage to be a proficient instructor just working for your agency.
Right.
You see how, you know how much agencies train. It's not enough to get a lot of mileage. So I had about 5 years doing that, and I enjoyed it. But I wasn't sure I wanted to do that full time when I got out. So I was kind of vacillated as I was retiring about not doing anything or doing that. And then I kind of decided pretty much my last year, like, yeah, I do want to do that.
What year did you retire? 22.
What's that?
The year you retired? 2022 or 23?
What was it? 23, I think. Or 22, yeah.
And did you already have your current company up and running, or did you get that up and running after you retired?
I started right after I retired, yeah.
And what do you offer as far as training services?
I do pretty much anything. So I do handgun, red dot courses, carbine courses, tactical shotgun, from beginners to advanced performance shooting, women's only courses. And then I also work for another company and we do law enforcement instructor courses. So I do like post-certified basic firearms instructor courses, rifle instructor courses, and red dot instructor courses.
Now, did the second one where you're training law enforcement, did you have to get certified by post to do those?
Yeah, those are post-certified courses, but I didn't do the post-certification. I work for another company that has all the post-certified courses.
As far as your own company, if somebody's interested in starting a similar type company, now that you've had 2 iterations, you had the first company you were with and now this one, what are some of the things that you've learned kind of the hard way that if somebody's thinking about getting into this space that they need to be mindful of?
Well, I would say that civilian training is different than law enforcement training. So for me, it's been kind of a growth process as an instructor to stay relevant. Although I always have taken training courses on my own time and dime, I probably average 5 courses a year since 1997. So I've taken a ton of courses, and probably 80% of those are, I spent myself through. But law enforcement is generally between 20 and 5 years behind what's happening in the civilian world. So even if you worked for, like, I ran the program, I felt it was very progressive. But then when I got into the civilian side of thing, I realized, like, I'm actually still kind of behind the curve. So now it's the industry is more geared toward performance shooting. So now I'm trying to find that balance between performance shooting and self-defense and where that lies. But yeah, if you are just a basic cop instructor and you're doing what law enforcement does, you're probably behind the curve unless you're training with the super relevant modern day trainers and bringing that into your department. And I always tried to host like really good instructors for our department and bring in, so we had modern cadre and relevant training. But yeah, it's different. And then catering the civilian market and teaching them is a different skill set and a different target audience. So it's definitely different. And then also it's a whole nother aspect of the business, because you can be really good at shooting and be an excellent instructor, but then there's the entrepreneurial aspect of running a business, which I didn't know anything about. So I'm learning that, how to be an entrepreneur, how to be a businessman. I've always been an entrepreneur, and now it's a complete switch. And I call it like drunks running a bar. You know what I mean? It's like, just because you like drinking and hanging out at a bar, you don't buy a bar and then become a good business owner. You got a lot of stuff to learn. So learning about that has been kind of fascinating for me and interesting, and I like it, but I have a lot to learn.
What's been some of the more difficult things to learn as far as being the entrepreneur side?
All the finance side of the house, and like, how do I do advertising? How do I do the tax aspect of it? How do I do sales? And there's all kinds of stuff. But nowadays, I don't know. I did a little bit of time in retail stuff working in a dive shop. And at that time, I kind of studied retail and like overcoming objections and how to sell stuff. And I hated it. I thought it was very like manipulative and wrong. And I'm like, if you have a good product and there's something people believe in, it should sell itself and you should feel good about it. But like, if I'm having to overcome people's objections and manipulate them to sell something, I don't want to do that. But now it seems like the market is very different with the internet and marketing. It's just like word of mouth, treat the customer good, solve the problem, all things I can totally get behind. I'm like, oh, I'm really enjoying that process of it, and just kind of creating a family environment. Like, hey, you come train with me. I'm here for you. I'll be your mentor. I will give you tips and tricks and help you, navigate this whole firearms journey, which is really new to a lot of the people. So I'm enjoying that aspect of it. But yeah, there's a lot to learn about running a company.
You find that most of the civilian shooters are just looking for basic proficiency, or are more civilians looking for more the advanced, like movement, rapid magazine changes, all of that type stuff?
It depends. I have all kinds. I have people who never, have a gun, but never really taken any training and want to learn. That's a big market right now with what's going on in the world. And then there's a lot of people who get quite proficient just kind of on their own. Now with YouTube and social media, they're able to get good information if they're able to vet and figure out who to follow and who to get information from. Some of those people can reach a pretty high level through dry practice and a little bit of range training, shooting competition, and they might want to learn the self-defense aspect of it or increase their performance. So you have all levels. You have basic beginning level 1 courses up to performance shooting.
Thinking about it from the liability standpoint. So you're teaching people firearm safety, firearm usage, and all of those aspects. Is there any type of liability that you have to be mindful of as the business owner, as the instructor? And have you experienced that? And then with that, is there any type of additional insurance or anything that you're required to have because of the nature of shooting guns?
Mm-hmm. So you have to have insurance. Most ranges require like a $2 million policy. It costs about $400 a year. And it's actually gotten cheaper over the years because most of us do a really good job, and there's very few firearms training accidents in the civilian world. I think there's more in law enforcement, to be honest with you. And a lot of that, I think, results from force-on-force training done incorrectly, causing injury. But yeah, I haven't experienced any type of problems with that or incurring liability. It seems like it's pretty great people that come into that space that don't seem to be, for the most part, the litigious or prone to injury type of thing. And like different than in-service training, they're all people that really want to be there. They're paying their own money. They're spending money on ammunition. They want to get there and they want to learn. And for me, I'm very safety conscious, so I keep a very small class size. I limit my classes at 12, and then I have 2 adjunct instructors. So I go to plenty of classes, and there's like 25, 30 people on the line with 1 instructor. And to me, that's just kind of, even if they're high-level shooters, you cannot keep track of that many people. So my goal is...
Not without a full range staff.
Yeah. I want to keep it more of like a boutique style, small, personal attention, safety, and make sure that when someone's on the line and they're shooting, they're getting personalized attention and coaching. Be like, hey, I see you doing this, or let's work on this with your grip. And they're not just a number on the line.
Right.
And I'm just paying attention to the person who's unsafe. So I try to keep it really small, but generally it's been really safe, positive, fun. If you keep it in small groups and you do it right, I think a lot of people get greedy in the industry and try to just pack these classes and then not hire adjunct instructors so they would get all the profits. But I'm personally like not so much into it for the money. Like I have my pension, and the way I view that business, it's not so much of an exchange of money for services. I'm doing it to like help people get better, more proficient, more self-reliant, and be safe, and kind of build that Second Amendment community to have a good reputation.
How often are you running your classes?
I do probably 1 open enrollment class per month, and then I'm teaching 1 firearms instructor course, which is like a 4-day course per month. And then I probably do 5 to 7 privates per month. So I'm working a lot. And then if I'm not working, I'm doing jujitsu and lifting weights and shooting. But yeah, it's turned into about half the month I'm working.
What's your long-term projection as far as your future is? How long you see you keeping your company going, or what's your long-term plans?
I'm hoping to do it for like another 10 or 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm hoping it'll just kind of like keep going up. And I'm working on bunch of different projects, and I'm hoping I'll just keep growing and progressing into a couple different venues and things.
So your mindset is not a little small side hustle just to kind of keep you from not having anything to do. Your intention is to grow this to quite a large company offering a lot of different services.
I hope so. Yeah. I tell you, like, whatever I do, I want to be the best at. So if I want to have a business at firearms training, I don't want it to be big, but I want it to be very high quality is my goal, and service a lot of different needs for people.
How was it stepping away from the badge and the uniform and the career for you?
Parts of it are hard. I miss the people. Like, I had a lot of good camaraderie with people, but as a sergeant, you have a lot of loneliness too. There's a lot of alone time. I don't miss that. Like being alone in an office at 3 a.m, doing scheduling and payroll and all that. I don't miss that stuff at all. But being out on the street and like helping the guys handle hot calls and doing the SWAT type of stuff, I miss that a little bit. But the main thing I liked about being a cop was training people, and I'm still doing that, training myself and training others. So the parts that I really enjoyed about the career, I'm not getting paid for it by the department anymore, but I'm getting paid for doing it on my own, and I got those skills through them, and I'm still, training and staying fit and doing jujitsu and all those things that I really love to do about the career. I'm still doing. So,
are you competing in jiu-jitsu or just kind of doing it just to keep yourself proficient with it?
Yeah, I've competed a few times as a white belt. I think I competed like 3 times, and once as a blue belt. And I'm like a 3-year blue belt right now. I'm trying to look to that purple. But yeah, I've been training for 7 years and still a blue belt. That's the way our gym is. We don't have stripes or anything. We just I was like 4-year white belt, 3-year blue belt. It's like, I know I'm earning it. So
the thing for me is that you see it as the journey, and you see it as when you look at your professor, and yes, they have a black belt, but that thing of just because they attain the black belt doesn't mean they know everything. And the longer you do it, the more you realize that even the high level guys don't know everything. Mm-hmm. There is so much to continue to learn from this sport that if you're just chasing the color on the belt, you're not going to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. You almost would say, just keep everybody quote unquote a white belt just to keep their gi closed, and just go through your journey.
Yeah. And then also the weight of that belt. Like if you do get that next belt, it's like, wow, now I gotta be this level. So I try not to focus on that.
Or you roll with that guy who's 20 years younger than you. And you're like, why can't I keep up with him?
Yeah. It's definitely, it's a fun journey though. But I find firearms and jiu-jitsu are both very similar. And once you reach a certain level, then it kind of takes months to progress a little bit. You're trying to get that quarter of a second off your drills, or get a little bit better at this position or that position. It's it takes a long time, but anything, really worthwhile is challenging like that. It makes it's nice.
No matter what you're doing as the new guy is when you're going to have the biggest opportunity for leaps in knowledge. And then once you're there for a little while, you're like, you're clawing just to get a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Going back to what we were talking about as far as the wellness space, now that you're out of it, are you still connected anyway in the wellness space? And what are you doing for yourself?
Well, for myself, I'm doing, after I retired, I kind of built a little area in the back of my house, built a nice little shed, little little second house basically, but I've got a sauna and a cold plunge in there, and we do a hot tub. So now for like recovery stuff after lifting and doing jujitsu, I do the cold plunge, do the sauna, do the hot tub, and spend a little bit of time just like stretching, working on my mind, decompressing a little bit, and doing that type of stuff, wellness space. And then I'm traveling a lot and spending time outdoors, which to me is like kind of a key component for my wellness, is like traveling and doing adventures.
Where's the most enjoyable place, or what have you enjoyed the most as far as traveling? Like, what's kind of been that thing like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting this?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of good trips since I retired. I've gone down to Baja and did a surfing trip down there. Went to Hawaii and did some diving over there. Went to Fiji and dove with some tiger sharks. And then one of our big trips was river rafting in Patagonia. Oh, wow. So I did a 10-day trip down there, and we river rafted the Fudaleafu River, which is a class 5 rapid, really fun. And then we did a 2-month trip to New Zealand last year. We flew over there, rented a van, and we spent about a month on the North Island and a month on the South Island. And we did every kind of adventure you can imagine there, from cave exploring to canyoneering, whitewater rafting, trekking, everything you can imagine. That was probably, I would say, like river rafting in Patagonia and doing New Zealand for 2 months was definitely a highlight.
It's been over 20 years now for me since I went to New Zealand, but the amount of outdoor activities that they have there, we joked about it at the time, but it was like, it almost felt like they just sit around and like, let's come up with a new thing that we could do, you know? And it was cool. It was truly a country that they take their time outside very seriously.
Mm-hmm. And it was high level. Like the stuff we signed up, let's do the advanced canyoneering, and we were like, we weren't fucking around.
You really meant advanced.
Yeah. So everything that we did that was like adventure was really like dialed up comparatively. Like you wouldn't see that level of, I think, liability exposure in the States. So they have no lawsuits over there. It's interesting with their medical system. No one's suing anybody over like being injured. The government just pays you out. You broke your arm, you get $5,000 or however it works. So they don't really have any of those like ambulance chasers or class action lawsuits. And the industry there is very well regulated for adventure type of stuff. So it was very fun.
I still say that meeting some of the people there, some of the truly nicest people I have ever met.
Oh, for sure.
Just nice and genuine people that I was there for an Ironman triathlon. And I remember getting there on a Monday, and the race was on Saturday, and I went into just a sporting goods store on a Monday just to waste some time. Ended up talking to one of the clerks in the store. How many people were also there that day? And then I went back on Friday, just kind of get rid of some of the nervous energy and just kind of walk around before the race. And he remembered me, and he was like, "Hey, good luck tomorrow on your race." And I was just like, how did you remember me of all the people that came through here? So yeah, just truly nice people.
Yeah, it was a great time. I would highly recommend going there. So that was something I always wanted to do and kind of plan for retirement, was like go to Australia, New Zealand. We kind of trickled it down to just New Zealand at this time. Might go back later and do Australia, but yeah, that was good. And then as far as staying connected to the wellness stuff, there was one part of the wellness space that I wanted to implement while I was with the sheriff's office, which was essentially like resiliency training. And I think it was kind of Matt Danyemsik's brainchild. You had him on your show. Awesome dude. But he kind of came up with the idea of doing like tactical training, jujitsu, and then also implementing wellness into that. So we've got a program together. It's called Warrior Development Program. The first course is going to be December 3rd and 4th. And what that is, basically a 2-day class for law enforcement. It's free. So I have a sponsor, basically a donor, that's paying for the course. So we'll have a half day of jiu-jitsu. Then they're going to get Jeff Takeda. He has Takeda Concepts.
I've had him on the podcast.
All right, yeah. So you know him. So he's doing the meditation and cold plunge portion in the afternoon after jiu-jitsu. And then the next day we'll do tactical shooting, which I'll run the shooting portion. And then Matt Danyemsik is running kind of an overall wellness aspect where we talk about nutrition, fitness, journaling, decompressing, armoring down after shifts, all that type of stuff. And then we'll have like catered lunches, t-shirts, challenge coins, whole thing to really make the officers feel like they're important. And
where's this class going to be at?
It's going to be up in San Luis Obispo.
And is it already full?
Yeah.
Oh,
already full. Yeah. So one thing I'm looking for though is other sponsors to continue this as an ongoing thing. So I'm basically working through a nonprofit. It's called Public Safety Development Group. And a friend of mine, Mike Smiley, runs it. And it's up in San Luis Obispo. So he was shot in the line of duty maybe about 4 years ago. And he just got medically retired. So he started this nonprofit. And the goal of the nonprofit is training cops for free because they need it. Yeah. And most budgets and stuff just don't allow for the amount of training that officers need. So this is kind of I've done some TAC med stuff with him. He's an EMT, former fireman, SWAT guy, cop. He's got a lot of skill sets.
Identity crisis.
Yeah. It's like, figure out where you want to. And now he's doing this nonprofit. So this is going to be our initial class. And I'm super excited about it. I've been trying to work on this project for maybe 5 years through different ways of attacking it. And it's finally going to happen. So I'm pretty excited about it. But I think in the wellness space, we do a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of venues and retreats and things for people with PTS, right? That's kind of like talking to a 400-pound diabetic about nutrition and exercise. It's like, well, now he's already got problems. What are we doing preventatively?
Let's not let him get to that point.
Correct. So that's this resiliency training. The goal is to catch guys kind of early on in their career, have them presented with like Brent Dugan's a former Marine. He's a SWAT guy with our agency. Now he's a reserve, but he runs the Paragon up in Paso Robles. So he's teaching the jiu-jitsu, and then Jeff is teaching the wellness. I'm teaching the firearms. Matt's teaching the wellness stuff. And so basically everybody's pretty much like a Marine, SWAT cop, officer with some street cred. And hopefully we can expose these guys to get the skill sets they need to live. That's important. That's part of wellness in my book too. Is if you can't fucking shoot and you don't bring anything to the table in a fight, your wellness is secondary to that. First, you need to be able to survive individual street combat. And then once you can do that, then let's worry about the secondary injuries to your brain or whatever might happen to you during that critical incident. So I think it's important to kind of do both and to do some of the wellness stuff preventatively. And if they see guys like us, maybe doing cold plunge or meditating, but also taking care of themselves, being physically fit, being able to shoot and fight, and be like, oh, well, that's an alternative to drinking and whoring around and doing a bunch of prescription drugs or gambling or buying all kinds of crazy shit. All the shit that everybody does because they're afraid to get help or admit that there's something going on. So we're hoping that philosophically we can make a change in corporate culture where younger cops will sway more toward taking care of themselves a little bit better. And I think jiu-jitsu and shooting is a part of that too. I think jiu-jitsu is an incredible wellness tool.
100%.
Without any of the other stuff.
I am so fortunate that I found it, and I had been thinking about it for a while, but finally stepped into it like you later in life. but I absolutely love that time on the mat. And then the other thing you find is it's your next community that you can be involved with. And you'll find that there's a lot of veterans and first responders within that community. So you're amongst your tribe.
Yeah, you find another tribe, and it's also cool that you meet a lot of cool people who are attorneys or doctors or construction workers or whatever, because you get that skewed view just surrounding yourself with law enforcement personnel that like the rest of the world is shitbags. And in jiu-jitsu, you kind of learn like there's great people in all walks of life, and they're all in that room. And then it's also cool when you need an electrician or I need a reference for an attorney or something like that. I will talk to one of my jiu-jitsu buddies and be like, hey, who do you know that does this or that? And it gives you a lot of networking skills. And then I think also when you train with people in jiu-jitsu, like you build a tighter kind of brotherhood. There's
100%.
There's a level of trust.
Yes.
When you're rolling with people and doing stuff that's potentially dangerous, you build that level of trust that I don't think you find in a lot of other places.
And the ability to teach yourself to push through adversity. I mean, if somebody's never experienced, not necessarily even somebody who's bigger than you in size, but somebody who knows how to put pressure on you and you really kind of feel like you're in the deep end of the pool.
Oh yeah.
And instead of freaking out, instead really kind of forcing yourself, all right, how do I calm down? How do I work through this to survive this? It carries over into so many things, and it's not a cliche. It really does teach you how to deal with life.
Yeah, and it gives you perspective of what real hardship is. When you're getting smashed or something, you think like, oh, I'm literally dying here, but I'm not going to tap. And when you start, it's like I've tapped the pressure before, and I like beat myself up over it pretty bad. Like, oh, that's unacceptable. You cannot do that, but shit happens sometimes, and you're like, okay, I need to work on this. I need to learn how to calm myself down or learn that I'm not dying of a heart attack right now, even though it feels like I can't breathe or whatever. But learning to work through that is very, it's challenging for the toughest. I don't care how tough you are. You're getting smashed by a big dude like that for a prolonged amount of time when you're tired. It tests you.
Or the ego side of it, you're big and some smaller person who knows better technique than you. You want to talk about getting frustrated.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is the good ones they'll let you put yourself in a bad position. They'll take advantage of it, but at least they'll pull you back and go, hey, this is what you keep doing. And then it's in your head and you're like, why do I keep putting my arm there?
Yeah. How did you catch me in that triangle 6 times in a row? Well, let me tell you. Yeah, they'll always help you out.
Afterwards.
Which is cool.
What I like, though, in you talking about putting this training class on is it shows the shift in the times that we're in, because you've got a bunch of people who are already buying into what you're selling, this totality of wellness. Take care of your proficiency, like you said, win the fight, but then let's also address the other side of how are you going to be after the fight? And the fact that you've already got a full class shows that we have a significant shift changing in the law enforcement community, that they're buying into this.
Yeah. Yeah. But it has to be free. Yes. But I'm so blessed that we can do that. I don't want to make money off law enforcement. I want them to get the training they need. You know what I mean? And through sponsors, you can do it. So there's just needs to be more people out there who are willing to help in the law enforcement community. But yeah, in the old days, that wasn't part of the culture at all, and it wasn't really acceptable. And now it's still difficult though. People don't want to raise their hand and say I'm struggling, and that needs to change, because if they don't raise their hand and get help, it's just going to get worse and worse. And then they'll deal with that through alcohol or porn or drugs or whatever the case may be, to get themselves through it and self-medicate. And then you have a train wreck later on. So I think it's good to get that normalized where people can get help and also learn how to take care of themselves in a more healthy way than alcohol.
I think it's one of those things that we need to give it time. And the analogy that I like to use is smoking. So you came on in the early 90s. How many guys still smoked when you came on?
Maybe 2 or 3.
Really?
Yeah.
Even then? So I remember quite a few that still smoked. And I remember the only thing that really kind of changed with my first organization is they actually did implement about 3 or 4 years into it. Hey, you can't smoke while you're in the car, you know, because the person taking the car next from you doesn't want to smell the cigarette smoke. But the analogy that I go with is, for the most part, you don't see many cops today that smoke cigarettes. And it's just been a slow, gradual change, and all the old timers kind of went away. I think it would be the same thing. If we could fast forward 20 or 30 years, you're going to see more and more that just take their overall wellness from an organizational standpoint from day one. This is what we do for our people. And it's normal.
Yeah.
So
now they've got an LD in the academy, mental health. And I think it's not just addressed toward like dealing with mental health.
it's your mental health.
It's your mental health. So that's a significant change, you know, and now depending on the agencies, like some agencies are super progressive and been doing this stuff for 20 years, you know, and then some have nothing, and then some have brand new programs. But really, like, in my opinion, most of this stuff should not be run by law enforcement. Like, you need a wellness coordinator, a professional who's in that space and actually has a degree.
And hopefully not going to drive off a cliff.
Yeah. But having cops, like having someone like me, I'm a knuckle dragger. Like, I'm not, you know, I've got a high school education and I'm trying to develop wellness shit. That's not right, in my opinion. I mean, I can kind of struggle through it and cobble shit together and rely on other people who have expertise. But that's the type of stuff that should be like a full-time position within the department. They should have multiple, you know, like a unit that deals with officer wellness that's headed by a real professional who's not a cop.
Yeah. I like that and obviously it comes down to dollars and cents, and I get that. But some of the bigger organizations that are embedding psychologists right in their agencies, you know, they just have an office there and they're there all the time, as opposed to, hey, it's, you know, Wednesday at 2:00, the doctor's going to be in the station. It's going to take so much longer for that to become the norm than as opposed to whenever the doctor is always there, it's easy just to go knock on the door.
Yeah. And the wellness folks need to be kind of embedded in the organization and be out there, like, be seen. You know, these chaplains that just want to, like, show up to these big things with the chief or whatever. No, you need to go ride graveyards with these dudes and be a known face in that station. So when there's a crisis, they're going to come talk to you, not be like, oh, that's the guy that hangs out with the sheriff or the chief. They're not going to trust that person at all. And the peer support need to be people that are actually, you know, working patrol or in these specialty units that are out there getting after it with these dudes. And the psychiatrists or the clinicians need to be people that are vetted and people that are part of the organization. Obviously, probably not the same people that do the fitness for duty and all that stuff. They need to bifurcate those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But be there for these people and be known faces that they have seen around the station and they've built some level of trust.
Trust, I think, is the big component to that. Trust in that you've seen them before, as opposed to, like you said, they don't just show up randomly like, who the hell are you?
Yeah.
You know, you have the opportunity to spend 2 minutes just, hey, Joe, how you doing today? And then you move on. But when you actually do need them, there is a sense of familiarity, but also that trust. Like, hey, man, every time I see you, you're just hanging out with the chief. You know?
Yeah.
There needs some separation.
Yeah. And I think it's hard for those people too, because like I've supervised a chaplaincy unit or whatever. These are people who are high level people within their organization. They're running the show. They're like a sheriff or a chief of police within that religious organization. And then they come to a department and basically no one trusts them. Everyone shits on them. Command staff is like, you can't be in the briefing, Padre. Get the fuck out of here. And they're like, what is happening? You know, so they have to like eat a lot of fucking crow to get accepted. And same thing with the clinicians and stuff like that. Like there's a heavy cost or price of admission to gain the law enforcement officer's trust, because we're kind of an untrusting and not the most welcoming crowd.
We're not cynical at all.
Yeah. So it's hard for them too, because they got to pay that price and like eat some shit to get accepted. But once they do, it's like, hey, this guy comes and ride graveyards with us or whatever. It's like they're going to talk to that person when they have crisis, you know? And I think it needs to be multi-tier too, because not everybody's maybe religious and wants to talk to a chaplain, you know, and they might be more geared toward peer support or a clinician. But if everybody's working together and knows where to steer people and there's a little bit of something for everybody, I think that's a powerful thing.
I think it's cool that even with you now transitioned out, you're still keeping a hand in that, helping the next generation. And so where I'm going with this is just kind of wrap it up. Now that you have transitioned away, any last pieces of advice that you could throw out to somebody heading towards or in the middle of their transition?
I would definitely recommend getting counseling to help you with that transition. I think that was a huge factor for me to be able to hang on to the things that were great about my career and that I really loved, and be proud of those things, and then kind of get rid of the things that I was disillusioned about or hurt or fucked with my head or whatever, and help you make a new plan for the next iteration of your life, because it's a pretty important aspect, and it can be the best part of your life if you plan it correctly and you're not trying to hang on to the past. Like, you accept it, move on, have a plan for the future, and embrace that next part of your journey with excitement. Like, to me, when I was retiring, I was very excited about, hey, what's coming next? I can't wait for the next chapter. And I like program building. I like developing stuff. It's like, if I have a new program to develop, like my company, or building, my family relationships back better from all that time away. There's a lot of things that you can do in the next phase that can be really exciting and rewarding. But I think a lot of guys are, stuck in that isolation mode, or they get used to spending time alone, and they don't have a plan for the future. They don't have external hobbies or any other identity outside of their identity as a cop. It can be damaging for them.
Well, like you said, they leave that, they tie to their anchor of what they used to be, and that just drags them down.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important to be able to be like, even when you're a cop, to not totally identify with being a cop, because that is all beyond your control. Like, you can get hurt at any time during your career and be done. Or you can be the best murder detective in the world, and the chief can come in tomorrow and say, hey, guess what? Detectives is now rotational and your time is done. Bye, you're back on patrol. Or whatever you put your identity into, it can be taken away like that, beyond your control. So it's like, you better have some eggs in other baskets besides that identity as a cop. I always felt like everything is very transitory and beyond your control in that environment. And as soon as you realize that, or the quicker you realize that, the better. It's like, I was very fortunate to make it through my career, like, without any major injuries, or, I had injuries and stuff, but nothing that ended my career, or mental issues, or get in trouble, or like, there's a million things that can happen to people. You see it all the time. So I think if you can make it to that end, if you go into counseling and get a plan for the future and help you make that transition, I think it's a really wise thing to do, and I encourage people to do it.
I appreciate your time. I wish you the best with growing your company.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button.
Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.